and forced my fist into her throat, and later grabbed the rope and tied it around her neck securely, and she was dead.
She loved her father more than anyone. To her, he was kind, protective, the perfect dad. But years later, she would discover something that would destroy everything she believed about him. Her father wasn't just hiding secrets. He was one of America's most notorious serial killers. Melissa Moore is the daughter of Keith Jesperson. And the most disturbing part isn't what he did. It's how normal a childhood felt while he was doing it. From the outside, her childhood looked almost perfect. She grew up in a quiet town called Toppenish, the kind of place where everyone knows each other and nothing ever seems out of place. Open fields, fresh air, simple living, it felt safe. And at the center of her world was her father. He wasn't just a dad, he was her hero. Whenever his truck pulled into town after days on the road, everything changed. She would run straight to him, excited, searching his pockets for loose change like it was treasure. Those small moments meant everything. He brought gifts when he could. He made holidays feel special, even when money was tight. He played with her, laughed with her, made her feel like she was the most important person in the world. To her, he was loving, protective, larger than life. And honestly, there was no reason to question it. But there was one detail that at the time seemed completely normal. He was gone a lot. As a long-haul truck driver, he spent days, sometimes weeks on the road. It was just part of life. That's what fathers did, right? Looking back now, that detail feels different. Because while she was at home, living those innocent childhood moments, her father was out there living a completely different life. And the most unsettling part, even back then, there were small cracks in the image, tiny moments that didn't quite fit. Things a child doesn't fully understand but never really forgets. At first, they were easy to ignore, but one day something happened that she could never unsee. And that's when the illusion started to break. At first, it was just a moment, the kind of moment the child doesn't fully understand but never forgets. She was only 6 years old. Outside the house near the barn, she found a few tiny kittens, small, fragile, barely moving. To her, it was exciting, something innocent, something to share. So she did what any child would do. She ran to her father. But instead of reacting with kindness, something shifted. His expression changed. And before she could even process what was happening, the situation turned into something she couldn't make sense of. What happened the next stayed with her for the rest of her life. Not just because of what he did, but because of how he reacted while doing it. There was no hesitation, no empathy, no sign that anything was wrong, just control, and something even more unsettling, enjoyment. In that moment, she saw a version of her father she had never seen before, not the man who brought gifts, not the man who made her feel safe. Something else, something colder. She didn't have the words for it back then. She couldn't explain it, couldn't understand it. But deep down, she felt it, that something wasn't right, that there was a side of him no one else could see. And as quickly as it happened, life went back to normal. Or at least that's how it seemed. Because moments like that don't just disappear. They stay quiet, hidden, waiting. And years later, that memory would start to make terrifying sense. But at the time, it was just one strange moment. Or at least, that's what she tried to believe. For a while, life kept moving like nothing had changed. But beneath the surface, things were starting to fall apart. Her parents' relationship was quietly breaking down. At first, it wasn't obvious. No explosive fights, no dramatic scenes, just distance, silence, something missing. Until one day the phone started ringing. and everything shifted. Women were calling the house strangers. One of them didn't hesitate to say it out loud. She claimed she was his girlfriend, just like that. No shame, no confusion. That was the moment mother realized the truth. He wasn't just distant, he was living a completely separate life. The marriage didn't survive it. After years together, the family split. Her mother took the kids and left, putting physical distance between them and the man they thought they knew. But Melissa didn't see it the same way. To her, he was still dad. She held on to that image tightly, the loving version, the one who showed up with gifts and smiles, the one she believed would come back and fix everything. And he did keep showing up, just enough to keep that belief alive. He'd visit when he passed through town, take them out to eat, go shopping, act like nothing had changed. On the surface, it felt normal, but the cracks were getting harder to ignore because during those visits, something about him felt off. He started saying things that didn't sit right, talking openly about women in ways that made her uncomfortable, crossing lines that a father shouldn't cross. At first, it was confusing. Then it became disturbing. She didn't fully understand it, but she knew one thing for sure. This wasn't normal. Still, she pushed those thoughts aside, because accepting them would mean questioning the person she trusted most, and she wasn't ready for that. But that uneasy feeling kept growing, until one day during a simple visit to a diner, he said something that would change everything, something that felt like a warning. And once she heard it, she couldn't ignore the truth anymore. It didn't happen in some dark, dramatic place. It happened in a normal diner, the kind of place where nothing important is supposed to happen. That's what made it feel even more unsettling. She was sitting across from her father, just another visit, just another conversation, until his tone changed. He looked at her and said he had something to tell her, something serious. But then he added one condition. If he told her, she couldn't tell anyone, not the police, not the authorities. And just like that, everything shifted. Her stomach dropped, because whatever he was about to say wasn't small. This wasn't a joke. This wasn't one of his inappropriate comments. This felt different, heavy. For a moment, it seemed like he was actually going to say it, like the truth was right there, about to come out. But then he stopped. He hesitated, pulled back, changed direction, and just like that, the moment was gone. No explanation, no confession, just silence. But the damage was already done, because now she knew there was something serious enough that he was afraid of the police, something he couldn't even say out loud. And from that point on, she couldn't unfeel it. That quiet suspicion turned into something much bigger. Anxiety, fear, questions with no answers. What was he hiding? What had he done? She didn't have proof. But deep down, she knew this wasn't normal. And soon, she wouldn't have to wonder anymore, because the truth was about to come out in a way no one could ignore. The truth didn't come quietly. It exploded, not through a confession to her, but through the media, the police, and a name that would soon be everywhere: Keith Jesperson, her father. The same man who brought her gifts, who made her laugh, who felt larger than life, was now being exposed as a serial killer. And not just any killer. A man who had been traveling across highways for years, using his job as a long-haul truck driver as the perfect cover, moving from place to place unnoticed, invisible, while living what looked like a normal life on the outside. Authorities revealed that he had taken the lives of multiple women across different states, victims who crossed paths with him and never made it home. But what made the case even more disturbing was how he handled it. He didn't just try to get away with it. He wanted attention. He sent letters to the police and media, confessing in detail, taunting them, even signing them with a chilling symbol, a smiley face. That's where the nickname came from. Not just because of what he did, but because of how he enjoyed playing with it. For Melissa, none of this felt real. It couldn't be. How do you connect those headlines to the man you called dad? How do you process that the person who made you feel safe was the same person others feared the most? It didn't make sense. It couldn't make sense. But the evidence was undeniable. The arrest, the confessions, the details no one else could know. The truth was right there. And in one moment, her entire reality collapsed. Everything she believed about her childhood, about her father, about herself, shattered. But as devastating as that revelation was, it wasn't the end of her story. It was just the beginning of a completely different kind of nightmare. The headlines didn't just expose him. They exposed her too. Overnight, her life changed in a way she couldn't control. People weren't just seeing a young woman anymore. They were seeing the daughter of Keith Jesperson. And that label followed her everywhere. It didn't matter who she was as a person. It didn't matter how she lived her life. In the eyes of the world, she was connected to something dark, something people couldn't understand. And the hardest part, neither could she, because the question wouldn't leave her mind. What if I'm like him? It sounds irrational, but when someone that close to you is capable of something that extreme, it plants a seed. Doubt, fear. She started questioning everything. Her thoughts, her emotions, even her identity. Was there something inside her that she couldn't see yet? Something waiting? Logically, she knew she wasn't him. But emotionally, it wasn't that simple. Because this wasn't just about what he did. It was about what it meant for her. The guilt came next. Not because she had done anything wrong, but because she felt tied to it. Like somehow she carried a piece of damage he caused. The shame was heavy, and it didn't come and go. It stayed. There's no guide for something like this. No clear way to separate yourself from a past that feels permanently attached to your name. And while the world moved on, she couldn't. Because for her, it wasn't just a story on the news. It was personal. It was her life. And just when she was trying to process all of it, she made a decision that would bring everything back into focus. A decision that many people couldn't understand. She decided to see him again. Most people would have cut all ties, disappeared, changed their name, never looked back. But she didn't. Instead, she walked straight back into it. She made the decision to visit her father in prison, Keith Jesperson. The same man the world saw as a monster, she still saw as dad. And that's what made it so complicated. Because when she sat across from him behind the glass, it didn't feel like the headlines. It didn't feel like the stories people told. It felt familiar, almost normal. And that was the part that disturbed her the most. How can someone be capable of something so dark and still feel so ordinary in person? But what happened next made the situation even more controversial. She didn't just go alone. She brought her children. She introduced them to him, their grandfather. On the surface, it might sound unbelievable, even wrong to some people. But for her, it wasn't that simple. She wasn't bringing them to meet a killer. She was bringing them to meet the man she once trusted, the man who was part of her life before everything came crashing down. Still, something about it didn't sit right. Not then, and definitely not later. Because as time passed, that moment started to weigh on her. The realization hit slowly that she had exposed her own children to someone the world feared, someone she herself didn't fully understand. And out of everything she had lived through, that became one of her deepest regrets. A moment she wished she could take back. But the past doesn't give second chances. And if facing her father wasn't hard enough, what she chose to do next would push her even further. Because this time, she wasn't going back to him. She was going toward the people he hurt most. This time, she wasn't walking into a prison. She was walking into someone else's life. A life destroyed by her father, Keith Jesperson. She had spent years trying to separate herself from what he did, trying to understand it, trying to survive it. But now she was doing something different. She was facing the aftermath. One of the most difficult moments came when she stood outside the home of the victim's family. A place filled with grief she didn't create, but still felt responsible for. Her heart was racing, because no matter how many times she rehearsed it in her mind, there is no perfect way to walk into that kind of pain. She knew what she was carrying, her name, her connection, her father's actions. And when the door finally opened, there were no easy words, no comfort, just raw emotion. Because for the family on the other side, this wasn't about understanding. It wasn't about perspective. It was about loss, irreversible loss. And she quickly realized something painful. She wasn't walking in as a bridge between worlds. She was walking in as a reminder. At times, the conversation became tense. Emotions surfaced that couldn't be controlled, words that couldn't be softened. And in that space, she understood something she had never fully grasped before. Her journey wasn't going to end in closure. There was no clean resolution for this. No moment where everything suddenly made sense. Because some damage doesn't get resolved. It just exists. And forgiveness, if it ever comes, isn't guaranteed. Walking away from that encounter, she carried something heavier than before. Not just guilt, but perspective. Because for the first time, she saw the full weight of what her father had done. Not through headlines, not through prison glass, but through the people who lived with the consequences every single day. And that's when the final truth settled in. She could not change who her father was. She could not erase what he did. But she could decide what she became because of it. And that question still follows her today. What do you do when the worst person in your life is also the one who gave you life? After everything, there's still no clean ending to her story. No moment where the pain disappears. No point where the past stops mattering. Because when your father is Keith Jesperson, life doesn't wrap itself up neatly. It stays with you forever. For Melissa, the hardest part was never just what he did. It was what it meant for her identity. How do you separate love from horror? How do you hold two completely opposite truths at the same time and still function? On one side, he was the father she remembers, the one who laughed with her, played with her, made her feel seen. And on the other side, he was someone capable of unimaginable harm. And those two versions don't cancel each other out. They coexist uncomfortably, silently. Over the years, she's tried to turn that pain into something meaningful, not to excuse anything, not to explain it away, but to help others who carry similar weight, people tied to someone they never chose, but are forever connected to. Because that's the part most people don't understand. You don't get to choose your origin, but you do get to decide what you do with it. Still, even with all the healing, all the reflection, all the distance she's built, there are questions that don't go away. Questions like, if someone can be both loving and monstrous, What does that say about how well we really know anyone? And more importantly, what would you do if you discovered the person you trusted most was hiding a life you never could have imagined? Some stories don't end with answers. They end with questions that stay with you long after the video is over.